Are you ready to become awesomer? Hello everyone, my name is Umar Hamid. I'm your host on the No Limit Selling podcast, where industry leaders share their tips, strategy, and advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Just before we get started, I've got a question for you. Do you have a negative voice inside your head? We all do, right? I'm going to help you remove that voice in under 30 days guaranteed. Not only remove it, but transform it. So instead of the voice that sabotages you, there's one that propels you to much higher levels of performance and success. There's a link in the show notes. Click on it to find out more. All right, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the No Limit Selling podcast, where we talk to leaders on how they grow their revenue and how they grow their people. And today I have the privilege of having Rob Chevez here with me today. He's the Chief Visionary Officer of the Costa companies. And Rob, probably a CEO has three really important tasks to do. We're going to delve into those just in a moment, but welcome to the program. And what made you pick the title Chief Visionary Officer?
I appreciate you having me on, Umar. Thank you so much. Well, I think leadership requires vision. And I love painting a vision in my mind as to what's possible. Early on in my life, I read the book Psycho-Cybernetics when I was in high school, and that served me well. Right, I was an athlete in high school, an athlete in college, and I remember thinking, if I can train in my mind as much as I can train in real life, I can be effective there.
Brilliant. So in my worldview, a true leader has three main jobs. The first one is to have a kick-ass, amazing vision that other people go, you know what, I'd take a bullet for that. Mm-hmm. And there's some research that has been done when you take a look at people that work 9 to 5, people that are managers, and people that are like true leaders. It turns out that people that are 9 to 5 hourly workers, typically they can't see past Friday. They see to the next paycheck. And when you have managers, some of them, depending where they are, can see maybe 3 months out. And when you have true leaders, they can see years out into the future. And that's one of the reasons they've reached that rank. So for a CEO, having the ability to have a vision that's compelling is job number one. Mm-hmm. Job number two, which is more challenging, is how do you build a culture within the organization where it isn't about people being selfish or protective? It's about how do we win and not how do I win? Mm-hmm. And then the third one is how do you build long-term shareholder value? How do you make that company more valuable? Let's delve into part two. You've got different companies. Pick one of the companies, and what kind of culture do you want, and how close are you to getting it, and what did you do to manifest it? Because just thinking about a culture and putting it on the wall isn't enough. It's how do you imprint it in the hearts of the people that follow you.
Mm-hmm. So really, there's one main company, Umar, and then there's lots of little businesses underneath that main company.
Nice.
And the way I look at it is that we empower entrepreneurs, right? Like I love the spirit of the entrepreneur.
Yes.
And so as I started thinking about building this business, I knew that I wanted to associate myself with people that were builders and that they had big dreams. And so we wanted to be able to create a world where they could live a big life within our world.
Yes.
And so in terms of culture, I wanted to make sure that was part of it, that as big as somebody could envision their life, they could live that world within our world, right? So that was number one, which meant that I had to build a big world for myself. I had to think, right, like really big and say, okay, what does this look like at scale? If I was within the organization, what would I want, right? How big could I actually get? And so we needed to make sure that we did that. And then we wanted to make sure that we call a forward culture. And this took some time to kind of develop. I started thinking of core values that meant a lot to me. And we said, well, we want to be family first. That family is important, especially, culturally, it's an important piece of my life. And then, we want to own our outcomes. So forward is an acronym, right? So forward is family first, own it. Raving fan service. So we wanted to make sure that we were creating raving fan service.
Nice.
I believe in working hard, right? So work hard. Always be learning. So I find that, learners are earners.
That's my highest value, learning new things.
Mine too, right? And then results matter. You've got to be results oriented
Yes.
in this, and then do the right thing, culture. And we said, okay, well, we are a forward culture. We're going to always be failing forward. We're entrepreneurial in nature, and we want to own our results. We want to create raving fans. We want to work hard. And we want to do the right thing. And so we just kind of built that into our ethos, and that's been the drum that we've been, kind of
Pounding.
beating for the last, yeah.
So let me pull back a little bit. So the first thing you said was, you wanted a place where people could come and have this big vision and grow into it. And to do that, you had to have a bigger vision so people could figure out where they fit in. So you've got some people that are like growing like crazy and really living up to that fully. And there are other people that kind of settle for a smaller vision, probably bigger than it would have been if they went somewhere else. So how do all the jigsaw pieces fit together where you don't discourage some people? And so how do you balance that? How do people fit into the culture in a way that whatever vision they have, they get to do, but you also get to encourage them to be larger? So it seems like a moving target. Could you delve into that a little bit more?
Well, I think of like when you went to elementary school, and
Mm-hmm.
then you went to middle school, and you went to high school, and then you went to college, and then you got your master's. Like there was this growth journey that occurred for you, and we've created that same growth journey within our organization. So depending on where you want to go, there's different levels and different steps and different opportunities that you can reach. But we make it okay to let people know, like, hey, it's totally fine to be where you are, right? You don't need to do this other thing. But for those that want that other thing, this path exists, right?
Nice.
And I do believe that people want to be pushed. At the end of the day, um, they want to be surrounded by people that are going to push them, right? And like you said, maybe they would push themselves a little bit further than they normally would, right? Just by being in our environment, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing, right? It's a good thing.
One of the things that leaders do, at least this is my hypothesis, is sometimes you're leading people and their trust in themselves only goes so far, and they leverage your trust in them and believe in that allows them to suspend the fear and go on the journey. Can you think of a specific example or a specific person? Don't mention the name of the person, but the reason I want specifics is you'll go, oh yeah, I know someone. This is what was going on, and because I believed in them, it allowed them to go on the journey. And do you have one of those stories you could share with us?
Um, yeah, I think it's important that people can see what the future looks like for them
Yeah.
if they stick to a certain path. So sometimes they come into the environment. I'm thinking of one person in particular, and when they're in that environment, they can see a bigger future for themselves, right?
Yep.
And so it pulls them through. You just have to trust them, and then let them know that the journey is not an easy journey. Like the journey is difficult, and that's what makes it so good, right? Like having difficulty in the journey is where you get all this internal satisfaction from. And so I think every leader that's come into our organization has had one place of where they kind of saw themselves. But
Yes.
then when they came into the organization, they saw that other people were doing things that were way past that. They said, you know what? If that person could do it, I can do it, right? And we make sure that we tell those stories. It's almost like, telling stories is an important piece of culture, and letting people know where somebody started and where they are today is an important piece in that, right? Um, there's one leader in particular that comes to mind. That's been with me for about 12 years, and man, he is just like I just unleashed the power, right?
I love it.
Uh, but you know, he had a big vision for his life, but it was kind of all over the place. Have you ever met somebody they've got really big vision? They know that they could be great, but their brain is firing in 1,000 different
Oh yeah.
directions, right? And so my job was just to kind of like just narrow
Focus it.
that focus a
Yeah.
little bit, and once that laser was focused, it's just like rocket fuel, right? And a lot of that had to do with just him seeing that there was a path in this direction that was worth going after.
So the underlying currency of what you just described is trust. His trust in you allowed him to let you focus where he was going. So talk to me about trust. A new manager coming in or a new team leader in real estate, they were good at what they were doing. Now all of a sudden they're in a leadership role. What are 3 things you'd get them to do in order to start building trust so they can lead their people in the right direction?
Let's see if I can remember this. This is something that last year when I was on this road trip, I started thinking deeply about this question, right? I call it like wise leadership, right?
Yes.
And wise leadership being like you've got to write down, especially for the people around you, you have to be able to write down what you want success to look like for this particular person. Right.
Yes.
So write down those things so that people understand what the rules of the road are. Trust is broken when you have an idea of what you want. They have a different idea and you guys are on 2 different wavelengths almost. So if you write this down and you guys agree on what this looks like, what success looks like, that is a great foundation to start off. Right. And then what happens is that you have to inspect and review like this ever so often, not because you want to micromanage anybody, because I'm not a fan of that, but you need to make sure that as a leader, that you're helping them accomplish their goals in this process. And if they had signed up for whatever it was that they were set out to do, whether it's sales or whether it's a leadership role, they need to make sure that somebody's kind of looking at that and course correcting a little bit, right?
Yeah, pause right there before you go to the next one, if I can interrupt.
Yeah.
So part of leadership really is setting expectations. And certainly what you described in the first step was, together, let's figure out what your vision looks like. And then part of the expectations are, as a leader, guiding them that we're going to work together to make sure you stay on track. Because the reality is life gets in the way. And if we frame it up properly and set the expectations, then it's a really valued, important part of the experience as opposed to, oh, my boss is checking up on me. Because if we let our people build their own frames, they get up to mischief and they misread the situation. So a part of leadership is really setting expectations, but also how we're going to work together. That expectation as well can really mean the difference between success and failure. So what's the third piece, do you think?
Sure. I would say you need to support them with the tools and the resources, right, to help them be successful in that endeavor. So there's going to be things that they're going to need, whether it's training, whether it's tools, whether it's knowledge, and you need to pour into them to help them in that process. Right. And then talent wants to get engaged, right? They want to be engaged consistently over a period of time. They want to be pushed. So wise, it's like write down those expectations that both sides have, right? Inspect what it is that both of you have agreed on, support them with the resources, tools, and then engage talent, right? Yes. Engage them, push them. And when you can, and by the way, what I find that trust is broken is when you stop doing one of those things, when you stop being consistent in that process.
Yeah.
When you yourself as a leader are not showing up for the leader. That's important. And when you're not having open dialogue about miscommunication, because people filter information differently. This is what I've realized. I might say to you, Umar, I want a blue, I want this to look blue.
Yes.
And your version of blue can be different than my version of blue.
Almost certainly.
And so we have to have this open dialogue about what blue actually means, right?
Get the Pantone color book out, and we both agree this is what it means. Absolutely.
This is what it means, right? And so and if you don't do that, then what happens is one leader could say, well, I wanted it blue. And he's like, I gave it to you.
I gave you blue. Like, what are you talking about? Make up your mind.
And then there's this disconnect between these two because you didn't have a real conversation about that, right?
Yeah, I think leadership can be a beautiful partnership. And there's going to be times when, if you're leading me, Rob, it's like that I am going to be disappointed in you, rightly or wrongly. But we need to have this relationship where if you value this relationship, it's your responsibility to bring it up to me. Because sometimes you're going to be right and sometimes you're not going to be right, and vice versa. And sometimes we let politeness get in the way of the truth. And if you've got the right intent and it's like, how do we both do well together? Then we owe it to ourselves to do that. In most organizations, it's like, well, I don't want to be seen as like the squeaky wheel, or he's going to think I don't know what I'm doing and all that kind of. So people need drama. It's what we thrive on. And it's either we let people create their own drama, or you as the leader give them a story. And you were talking about stories are so important. They're hotwired in our DNA, is that we need to kind of provide that drama that points everybody in the right direction. And they know. So this is one of the theories that I work on, is in order to have a highly effective organization, people need to trust in themselves. They need to trust in the leader, and they need to trust in the processes. And if we can do that, and there's a level of open communications, then you become a lot faster than your competition. Because even if you make a mistake, you get corrected really quickly. And speed is a strategic advantage in the world we live in. Thoughts on that hypothesis?
Yeah. I'm going to go back to something you said earlier, and it's you use the word intent, and I
Yes.
use that often within I when somebody's bringing something to me, I'm always like, what's the intent? Like, what is this person's spirit in this? What is
Yes.
their intent, right? Because sometimes people don't have the right words to communicate what they really want to communicate, right? And so it's about this understanding that if you guys are in this to win it, right? And if the intent is to move forward in a constructive way, using healthy dialogue, right? And
Yes.
uncovering what people mean and deciphering what's blue and what's not blue, right? And triangulate, truth, like Ray Dalio talks about, like triangulating truth, right?
Yes.
Then uh, yes, you can move things forward in a positive manner, right? But it requires healthy dialogue in order
Yes.
to do that. Like, and so everybody has to be okay with setting the stage and the rules, that it's okay to have this healthy dialogue as long as the intent is in the right place, right?
So something that kind of sparks out of that, and thank you for sharing that, is, the one thing I've never asked anybody ever in the history of my life,
Hmm.
what is your intent in
Hmm.
asking that question? And I think
Hmm.
that's missing out of what I'm doing, because sometimes people come to something and they've got frustration. And when they go to communicate, it comes across badly. And I think
Hmm.
one of the finest instruments we have is our body in sensing when there's a disconnect. So they look angry,
Hmm.
but I'm not feeling that, like, not the malintent isn't there. And sometimes I think if we ask that question, I can see you're frustrated, but what's your intent in asking that question? And it's like, I feel stupid because I don't get this. And what we're
Hmm.
perceiving is, you think I'm an idiot. And so, yeah, I think intent is so important, because we've been talking about everything kind of looking inward in our organizations. It's when we go externally to our customers that our intent is so important there as well. Because if they
Oh,
really get a sense
incredible.
of, this person here is trying to help me get the most
Hmm.
value for my money to buy a house, or the highest value for my house, if they really get that, then they follow the advice. If it's just like, oh, it's a sales guy, he's in it for himself, which may not be what we want, but how do we communicate that intent? And the first step is to have it.
Yeah, yeah. Is the come from a place like, so you need to check what your intent is in that
Yes.
sales process. That's very important, right? Like, what's your intent? I always tell everybody on my team, your job is to make a friend. That's your job, right? Your
High five.
job
If
is
you were there,
to,
I'd give you a high five right now.
yeah, your job is to make a friend, right? And during this process, what you want to do is you want to guide this friend to the most favorable outcome. And if you can come from that spirit of friendship and come from that spirit of being a teacher in this process, like selling like is easy at that point. It's not
Yes.
even selling. It's just like you're
It's
just
helping.
helping.
Yeah,
It's
it's
helping.
helping.
It's
And
helping. And many years ago, you've been in the sales game for some time. You familiar with Guru Ganesh, right?
oh yeah,
Sandler sales
I've
training.
got a
Okay.
picture. I got a picture with him in
Okay.
my archives.
So 20 years ago, I think I took, it might have been 20 years ago. I was I deep dove into Sandler and spin selling and all the rest. And there was
Yes.
another one, like how to sell to CEOs, right?
Right.
And I forget the
Selling
name of
to
the
Vito.
gentleman. I remember selling to Vito, right? But there was selling to CEOs. And one of the things I remember from this one in particular was if you feel it, if you sense it, find a way to bring it out and say it, right?
Yeah.
and like bring that out. Hey, Umar, I feel that for whatever reason right now there's that like I said something that it didn't resonate well with you. Let's explore that a little bit and
Yeah,
bringing those conversations to the forefront. So important as a leader, as a salesperson, as a husband, as a wife, right? Like all of it.
absolutely. And I think we kind of go full circle because in that conversation, if we don't have trust established, I can't ask that question. I could ask it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to get a really good answer. But if we have that intent right, we build that trust right, then we pick up a vibe. Then it's perfectly fine. It's like, hey, Rob, I'm getting a sense that, there's an unanswered question. Am I picking it up right?
Yeah. So I was going to say, so let's go back to the trust piece because I uh, I might have skipped over this piece, right? We always say calibrate, educate, facilitate. So calibration is just asking lots of open-ended questions to
Yes.
learn about the other side to real and that develops trust, right? When people feel heard and
Hallelujah.
loved,
For sure.
right? And that their input is valued and it's acknowledged and it's not fought and it's validated. That's the only time you can ever move somebody is when they actually feel like they've been understood,
Yes.
right?
And even when you don't want to be understood, when they have like a criminal is grabbing someone, survival is connecting with their humanity. I got 3 kids. Do you have any kids? And it's like, well, yeah, I got a couple. As soon as you build that bridge, even though it's literally a life or death situation, you save your life when you do that. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
sales is not a life threatening thing, and certainly relationships are not. So it's the fundamentals of being human, right? It's me respecting that human being on the other side, me building a bridge from here to there. And in doing that, we're going to get to the truth faster. And that truth either going to lead us to do business or not. But we're still going to part friends and we're going to have that relationship that will come around later on.
Mm-hmm.
And so brilliant. So tell me about a time, Rob, where you found yourself not having trust. Things were going either it was somebody leading you, where you realized, wait a minute, this is the missing element. I don't trust them for whatever reason. And did you figure out whether it was a you issue or a them issue or a communication issue?
Let me reflect on this a little bit. I think my biggest is if somebody says that they're going to do something,
Mm-hmm.
did they actually do it or not?
Yes,
Right. And so over time, like trust happens over time, over an
of
extended
course.
period of time,
Absolutely.
right? Like where somebody's consistently going to show up the way that you hope for them to show up. Can somebody miss a day or could there be, if they dropped the ball one time?
Mhm.
Yes, we're all human, right? But over time, an extended period of time, like how do they show up? Um, and so the reason why I have a hard time with that is I don't spend time a lot of time with people that like I know right off the bat, okay, like that isn't going to go in the direction,
Right.
and I don't dwell on it. Does that make sense? Like
It does, yeah.
I never even reflect on it. I'm just like, okay, well, okay, I just put them in that category over there and just keep moving forward. Um, I haven't experienced
Yeah, I'll
something like that.
articulate something from my side. I can't think of a specific example, but sometimes I have made a judgment about the person that I'm interacting with. And when you make a judgment, it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy.
Mm,
And sometimes the judgment is not a correct judgment. And
mm,
sometimes I catch myself like, what's the disconnect here? And then it's like, oh, it's not a them issue, it's a me issue. When I first met them, I had this box I put them in, and they actually don't belong there. They belong somewhere else. And so what I use is very much this instrument, this body. Like if I'm interacting with someone and I get an uncomfortable feeling, I have to kind of ask myself, is this, am I feeling it or are they? And if I'm feeling it, what's causing it? And just by noticing that and asking the question, and not in the middle of the conversation, hold on for a minute, Rob. Do you feeling? What's causing it? Just doing an internal check and say, oh, I think we're not on the same wavelength. Then I'll go and ask the question. It's like, hey, Rob, I think we're like not on the same wavelength. This is kind of what I'm seeing. Are we on the same way? And then we figure it out. So I think
Yeah,
ultimately,
you have to be careful with that a little bit, only from the perspective of like there are people that you run across in your life that have wounded and hurt you, that might look a certain way or
Yes.
have said a certain thing. And like these unconscious triggers can occur, which could create this uneasiness, right? And then you do have to kind of reflect and be like, what was that, right? And yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is I've always just seen what have people done over the long term in their
Yep.
life. You started the conversation asking a question about, or maybe when you and I were talking off air beforehand, like what is it that I look for in people, that are leaders or future leaders,
Yes.
people that are going to grow, right? And one of the key things I look at is, well, what have been some of these patterns in their life, so that I can understand. I truly believe that people can change, right? I
Yes.
do,
Absolutely.
and I also know that I'm not in that bit, that I've had to learn that I'm not in the business of building that person. I'm in the business of unlocking the potential that's already there, right? I look for the people that have this documented success pattern already established over an extended period of time, because that's what I need within the sales organization, right? Because if you're not careful, otherwise it could be therapy as opposed to,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
right? And so I look for that. That's why many times I look for people that have, let's say they were Eagle Scouts when they were younger, or they played sports when they were younger, and they saw this pattern of success in their life, or they instruments, or in the theater, or something where they had to learn how to become good at something over an extended period of time, not 1 year, but 5 years or a decade, right? Once I know that they've developed that pattern, they've learned how to learn, and they've learned this incremental of like, learn something, fail, fix it, succeed, fail again, like this failing
Oh
forward
yeah,
pattern. And I would think that's one of the biggest traits I look for in people,
brilliant.
right?
So Rob, few questions before we part company today.
Sure.
First one is, what makes you happy?
Cup of coffee with the sun shining in my face, being next to my wife, the dog, nature, like simple things make me happy, right?
Brilliant.
I've learned that it's moments and people, relationships, and it's the simple things that truly make me happy. Um, and then I love to learn, and I love to push myself and grow, and that makes me happy. It's one of my values, right? Like if I'm not constantly learning and implementing, um, well, I don't know what that feels like, because I'm always constantly like, I just know that doing that brings joy to my life, right?
Brilliant. What's one mind hack you would share with our viewers and our listeners that they could implement that would allow them to be more productive, more successful, happier? What's that one thing you'd like to share?
I would think it's know that people have walked the path before you, and that you could literally cut 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years off your life by sitting next to, or being partner with, or seeking information from people that have already walked that path. You can get
Yes,
there a lot faster. I think people are always trying to they're trying to do it themselves. And I think that that's slow, right? It's a slow process. You can get there, but I think it's slow. I think modeling is the fastest way to hack.
absolutely. And I think a lot of companies that franchise, the franchisees that do the best are the ones that follow the system to the letter. And the
Mm-hmm.
ones that struggle
Mm-hmm.
are the smart ones that are trying to say, oh, this is the best way. I got a better way. So yeah, find
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's done it, walk their path. And last but not least, what's the next area of learning for you? Where's Rob 4.0, whatever Rob that is? What are you
Yeah,
striving for?
it's a leadership game, right? As we continue to expand and grow our businesses, I realize that the business only will only rise to the level of the leaders that are there. So I realize that for us to be a leadership development business, that I have to develop myself as a leader, and so that is the journey, right? The first part of my life was the sales and marketing journey, self
Yep.
leadership, right? And now it's like, okay, how do we really make this really big? And I think the only way we could do this is by personally growing as a leader. And if I want to hack that, is by mentoring with people that are already amazing
Doing that.
leaders, right? And
Absolutely.
doing that right at a really high level. So that's my journey moving forward.
Superb. Rob, thank you so much for spending time with me today. It's like 31 minutes went by like that.
Umar, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.